Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of the Hare Krishnas in Britain podcast. This is a podcast brought to you by the Hare Krishna Project, which is a national preaching initiative which seeks to share Krishna consciousness with a new audience. And believe it or not, this is our 30th episode. We have got to episode number 30 without being struck off air or the Facebook page being unpublished or anything else that might happen in the digital world of media. And I firstly really want to just say thank you to everyone who's tuning in to watch this or listen to this on a regular basis, either on YouTube or Facebook. It is now Britain's number one Hare Krishna podcast, or the number one Hare Krishna podcast in the UK. And I really want to thank you all for making that possible. You know, if it was just me and my mum watching it every week, it wouldn't go very far. But actually, it's thanks to you all. There's around 1,000 of you, tuning in on a regular basis to hear not hear what I have to say, to hear what our guests and what they're up to. And this is a special episode, not just because it's number 30, but because for the first time ever on this podcast, we're going to the Isle of Wight virtually. I was in the Isle of Wight 6 years ago for a festival with some devotees. We did lots of chanting and singing and dancing. And I'm really pleased to welcome our guest, Benjahman, also known as Jagannath, who's on the Isle of Wight. Hare Krishna, Benjahman.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Thank you for having me.
It's great to, no worries at all. It's really great to have you on the show. You and I think, have been in contact. Maybe it is as long as 2 years, actually.
It is. Pre-COVID.
Yeah, and not social media. COVID has made everything just kind of morph, and the last 2 years have gone so quickly. It's a bit scary. One sense it's scary, one sense it's not. There's 427,000 years left of the Kali Yuga, so we'd all just chill out a bit. But and we're not in control anyway. We're not in control of anything, so just chill. And we've been, chatting and everything, and and I'm really pleased that you've joined us as our guest this week. So Benjahman, or Jagannath, tell us a bit about you, your background, and where you're from.
Okay, so I am 56 years young, but my soul is very old. Let's put it that way. I grew up in South London for my sins, because it is pretty simple to grow up in South London. And I grew up in what was seemingly a privileged lifestyle. I grew up with quite upper middle class grandparents who rescued me from a very brutal father and an absent mother at 6 months old. Unfortunately, it wasn't the easiest childhood, because my grandfather was out of the frying pan into the fire. So my grandfather was a military man and quite brutal. And in that respect, without going into too much detail, I do a lot of work in my job now around. Although I work for the NHS, so let's get that out of the way. The fabulous NHS.
Key worker, you're a saint.
I'm certainly not. But I'm it doesn't stand for the No Hope Society. It is NHS. So within there, I'm a health and safety advisor, posh lead and legal compliance auditor. But I also do a lot of work around equality and diversity, and I'm an ambassador for the White Ribbon Trust, which is to do with male against female violence, and so because of my background, that's something that's very dear to me. So I grew up in South London, but from a young age, I wasn't the football-loving boy or anything like that. And I grew up in those dark years of the mid-1970s when you went to school, and if you didn't support Chelsea, where I came from, you probably didn't see the end of the school day without some bruises. But I was one of those children that I was a reader, a poetry lover, a thinker. I was that type. I was academic. It shows you how bad I was when it came to sport, because my games teacher used to get, and this shows you how things have changed since the 1970s, actually gave me a Benson and Hedges cigarette and told me to go behind the tree and smoke that, and not ruin the game for everybody else. So things have long changed since those days, thank goodness. But I was never into those kind of things. I have had a spiritual yearning, and I think that is the best word for it. I've had a yearning for a little voice inside me that says there is far more to you than you see, and you are not the composite parts of what you see in the mirror. And I've always had that thing that we are, no matter what life form you are, whether you're animal or pre-amoebic or whatever, right up to complex characters, animals, up to the human birth. I've always thought that the electricity that makes us work, makes the meat suit walk about, is the same. When I see a dog, the electricity inside it that is missing when it dies is the same as the one that's inside me, and that has triggered me all my life. Up until the point where a major change for me, I rebelled big time when I was 12, 13 years old. I was exposed to the Sex Pistols, and not just by record, but by immersion into one of their gigs at very, very early age.
So you were 12. I mean, the only knowledge I have of the Sex Pistols is they released that song, that kind of "God Save the Queen," right?
Yes.
Which came out for the Silver Jubilee in '77.
Yeah. 7. Yes.
Yeah,
correct.
that's the only knowledge I have. I mean, of them.
So I was my next door neighbour, but one, she was dating one of the Sex Pistols at the time, the original bass player. And,
wow.
And I'd never seen a girl with blue hair or whatever, and wearing underwear in the street and stuff like that, and a string vest and not a lot else, and black lipstick, and it did absolutely, wow, So I learned. I threw myself into that because it was music for me was an escape from my very, very strict upbringing. I use the word strict in the loosest possible terms. In my slightly psychopathic upbringing of control and violence, and it's like living. People say, "Oh, you grew up in a huge house, and how beautiful," but they don't know the fear of going to bed at night and waiting for somebody to come in and thump you or whatever, and or psychologically manipulate you and whatever. So music was my escape, and I left home. I was always academic at school, and I left home quite early on. Left home at 16.
Did you have any siblings?
I have 2 elder brothers. One is I heard had died, and the other one I met them for half an hour in my life once when I was a child, but I know this might sound not so nice really, but I don't mean it how it sounds. I've never had that thing of family. I don't really understand it. I don't have that. That doesn't. It's not a driver for me. It's not something that I can relate to. And it's always been. I'm here, and in the same way that I have no scope of nationality or whichever rock I'm standing on, that's where I'm from. At the end of the day, I've always thought I'm from the planet Earth, but that's only the meat suit of me. The inner part of me could be from anywhere, and it's only that I'm in this meat suit that I walk about in that keeps me grounded where I am. So I've never really thought about concepts of nationalism, patriotism, small-minded ideas of political right-wing, that kind of thing. Have never. They don't attract me because I don't understand the logic of this is my piece of rock that I live on, which will belong here after you die, and was here a long time before you were born. And if you attach yourself to those things, you've actually missed the greater experience of it all. My thing is to travel, to see, understand people, that we understand. And I suppose when I was 16, I started seriously looking at spiritualism in different ways. I read the Autobiography of Malcolm X. And this was at a time when in London, black and white were very polarized. It wasn't like it is now. It was a lot different. Whites and blacks, there was a lot of skinheads about. There was a lot of quite militant black Rastafarianism, whatever, that kind of way, and understandably, and Asian sort of children trying to physically conform to some real conservative norms that their parents had put on them, and they were hated by both sides. It's a very difficult time, especially at school. And I saw that, and I thought, there's got to be more than this. And so reading an autobiography of Malcolm X triggered me, and there's the line where he travels, and when he came out of the black nationalist form of Islam, which he found wasn't real Islam, and he went to the Middle East. He saw that white and black all together and whatever, and we're all praying in the same direction to the same thing in the same language, a unifying experience. And he said that he found that everybody who snored in the same language, and I love that. So it's that thing of the more windows I look through, the more languages I can understand people in, the more breakdown of cultural barriers we have, the greater we find out that we're actually all the same, and we're all actually still scared of the same things.
So tell us a bit about your kind of religious experiences over the years, in terms of different things you've delved into, different religious traditions and backgrounds and philosophies.
Well, I had so when I was about 15, I mean, one of my greatest loves in life was reggae. I mean, proper hardcore dub reggae, and that came from punk, because there was very few punk records around at the time, and a lot of the DJs played reggae. So Don Letts, for instance, and people like that played a lot of reggae. And I had some friends around Notting Hill, and I knew one of their fathers who owned a sound system, and I used to go around their house, and his wife used to teach me how to cook, and so I learned Scotch bonnets were a wonderful thing, and spicy food was a wonderful thing, and we used to sit around the table and we'd talk, and he used to say, there is history and there is his story, and he gave me a rundown of what history is like from his perspective. So Christopher Columbus, etc. He discovered, as he said to me, he said he didn't discover anything. There wasn't A already there, or B wasn't there for Europeans, and he discovered it for Europeans. And I thought, wow, this is, so there's so much that I'd been taught at school that I questioned greatly, and I went on to listen to a lot of what he said. But that thing around Malcolm X's autobiography, when I saw that thing of Islam, I wanted to know more. So about 17, 18, I decided, quite off the cuff in some ways, you got to remember that there was no Al Qaeda then, there was no ISIS then, there was no Islamic terrorism then, there was none of the prerequisites we have of labeling of Islam that we have now then. It just didn't exist. The nearest you got to was the occasional hijacking of a plane by the PLO in the mid 1970s. That was, and it's in the far, but it wasn't really Islamically driven. It was more to do with the Palestinian question and land rights in Israel and that kind of thing, which I'm certainly not going to get into. So there was none of that non-spiritual side of Islam, which I call it, which they like to call Islamist. So there was none of that. I'm not saying it wasn't there, but it certainly wasn't any of the Islam that I experienced. And so I decided to go to the London Mosque, the big one in Regent's Park. Now you've got to remember, I looked fairly strange then. I wish I had a photo to put up and show you what I looked like. Because I came from a punk background, and I'd pushed my hair down, which was out like here, and I pushed it down, tried to make myself look as reasonable as possible, which looking back, it probably wasn't very reasonable. And And I walked into the mosque in Regent's Park. I said, "Can you teach me?" And they looked at me as if I was, there was no white people who were Muslim at that time. Or I'm not saying they didn't exist, but there was none that I saw it seen. And I was considered a real, my goodness, and people just went around me like in that sort of almost love bombing type way, but sort of really weird. They were either slightly don't speak to him, or it was like they couldn't speak to me enough. And they took me to the secretary of the mosque, a man named Abdullah, and we talked for about 4 hours, which seemed like 5 minutes, and we talked about the nature of God and what he thought I believed. And I've always had that thing that the essence of God is one, and we have facet like a facet of a diamond.
Mm.
We have many facets, but we're still looking at one thing. That idea of steam and ice and water are the same thing. They are just in different formats of that one thing. So I very much looked at God in that sense.
So how old were you at the time when you went to the mosque?
18.
18. So we're mid to early 80s, early to mid 80s.
So we're talking
18 to 50. I'm trying to work
84.
84. Okay.
Yeah.
And
Probably
then
before you were born.
Actually, 84 was the year I was born.
I feel so old.
Yeah, I won't tell you how old my mum is. She was very young when she had me.
Right.
Anyway, so so in terms of, so you then could we use the expression you converted to Islam? You became a Muslim?
I did. I threw myself in lock, stock, and barrel, and I signed myself up for Arabic classes and all the rest of it. And I learned Arabic surprisingly quickly. I've always been good at imitation of voices, accents, whatever, just for fun at school, doing a South African accent, it's great, and whatever. Different accents, because I like the way language works. I've always loved language. Mathematically atrocious, but linguistically, I love it. I absolutely love it. So and they gave me a Quran in English, and I read it and whatever. Some of it, and it's funny. When we're on a spiritual journey, we sometimes, and this is with the retrospective age now, looking back, I'm sure we read things where we park the bits we can't quite grasp, or that don't sound quite right, and we go, well, we like this bit, so we'll consciously grab that bit and we'll move this bit away because we don't really want to deal with it. We do that when we're young. Well, I don't think we necessarily, if you're a thinking person, you shouldn't do it when you're old. And if there's anybody out there who is on a spiritual journey, if you have a nagging doubt, deal with that doubt now. Do not sort of park it, because if you do, you might find you've wasted 30 years or whatever it might be. Or not wasted, but you will have regretted it in some way. And there were some bits in the Quran that I did have a little bit of a trouble with.
So how long did you practice Islam for? How long were you a Muslim for?
Quarter of a century.
Wow. So let me just, I'm terrible at maths as well.
25 years.
So 25 years. So 1985, 95 till up to about 2010.
Give or take.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. That's a big chunk out of someone's life, isn't it?
Yeah, with some periods of extreme involvement. I don't mean extreme. Sorry, I shouldn't have used that word. Really extreme. I mean like very passionate involvement, and sometimes of more taking the back step.
So, what happened in or around 2010 for you to stop using that label for yourself?
Quite easily. I actually, to be fair with you, I stopped before then. I kept hold of parts of it, but I stopped really being involved in 2001.
It's like when people, it's like in the Western world, in Britain, people call themselves a Christian, but what is it really? When do you stop really, or what does it really mean? You know. Anyway, it's a cultural thing. But sorry, yeah, 2001. Okay.
But if you're saying when did I drop the label of what I am,
Yeah.
and the way that label operates within a framework of spirituality, I sort of dropped most of it in 2001.
Okay.
For reasons that I'm sure those who are pretty erudite in their history can work out why.
I've just realized.
However,
Yeah, I've just
however,
realized.
the idea of the word Muslim means one who submits. If you're asking me, am I still a Muslim in the definition of what the term means, then even today in Krishna consciousness, I'm a Muslim in the way that I submit, because I submit to that is greater than me, of course, and that for me now is seva, service. So that is a form of that is submission, as far as I see it. And if you don't submit to that which is you, you cannot really come to the essence of the divine.
So 2001, I obviously just recall what happened in 2001. Everyone remembers what they were on the day when it happened.
Yep.
It's now 20 years later. You're
Yep.
not, so I'm using kind of simple terms and labels and descriptions here. You're dressed now in a particular way that doesn't look particularly, actually it could look particularly Muslim, I mean, in terms of clothing, but you've got the black shirt possibly, but
it's actually grey.
Great, actually
It's a
grey.
light
It's
grey.
actually grey. So this kind of leads me nicely onto my next question. What attracted you to Krishna consciousness, Gaudiya Vaishnavism, Bhakti Yoga? How did you get involved? What's your relationship with the Krishna consciousness movement?
It's quite strange actually, because Krishna consciousness came to me before Islam. How
Okay.
about that? So when I was 13, I was walking around London, and I went to look at shops and things like that, which you do, and and I used to go up and down the tube and whatever, and I was around about St Paul's Cathedral, and the steps of St Paul's Cathedral, and there was a devotee on the steps doing book service, and he came up to me. Bear in mind, I'm a young boy, but with my Sex Pistols type things on, and said, "Would you be interested in it?" And I looked at it, and it said that, and it was the book, The Science of Self-Realization. And I still have the book that I bought from him all that time ago.
Wow. So we're talking like 1979-ish.
Yes, absolutely.
I worked out from your,
yeah.
So that's
Absolutely.
43 years.
And I've still got the book. Unfortunately, I can't show it to you right now, but I still have it. When we meet up, I'll show you the copy.
Amazing.
It was the sort of dark goldy coloured bronze book with, in blue letters, the Science of Self-Realization. And I took it. I gave him 50p, which I think was what I had on me at the time. He wanted £1. I only had 50p, and I thought, I got to give him something, because I don't know what to do. I wasn't who I am today. I was quite shy, and I took the book and I read it. Now, being a 13-year-old, I was quite advanced for reading. So, and the Science of Self-Realization is quite deep, and I have to say, it befuddled me in places. But I absolutely loved some of the pictures within it. And one of the pictures resonated me and has resonated with me ever since.
I've got it off the shelf.
Exactly. It's actually a slightly darker cover than that.
Yeah.
But it's the same pictures at the top. So inside there's a picture of a devotee, a yogi, in the middle of the forest. Or depends what exactly, and yeah, that's the one. And there's lots of animals around him, and you can see a little picture of Krishna within the heart of every single being in that picture.
Mm-hmm.
This has had a profound effect on me, and that is where it comes from me, that God is in absolutely everything, and nothing can exist outside or without having that divine spark. And when you die, it doesn't matter what you do medically in the NHS, and how much of a miracle workers people think we are. And you're going to die, you're going to die. We can try and bring people back, and that means that they weren't meant to go at that time. But that once that life, that the spark, the jiva, the atma has come away, then there's not a lot we can do. We can't bring it back. We can't just grab it back. So when I saw that, that has been a defining thing within my spirituality ever since that moment. Because, and that is a profound and deeply held thing for me, that the concept that's why all life is important. And one of the reasons that when I went to Islam, I was very, I suppose I didn't have anybody around that would have taken me into Krishna consciousness after that. And I didn't, to be honest with you, when I saw people dancing in the street and, Krishna, I think I would have been a little bit too conservative, a bit too inward for that at the time. Sankirtan would have been too much for me. I needed to sit there with my, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, so on and so forth. And that would have been me, and I would be quite happy and do my prayer in quiet and get up at dawn and do all that and the rest of it. And it's a weird way life takes you. So when I went into Islam, they said, your Arabic is very good. I learnt the first 2 chapters, first surah of the Quran, which, granted to you, is only 7 verses. But I learnt it in an hour in Arabic. And I sat there and I said, I'm learning this. And they said, it'll come, don't worry, it'll come. And I sat there and I recited it. I can still do it today. I've never lost that ability of remembering, and I can still remember about 1/3 of the Quran by memory.
Wow.
So
that's amazing.
I loved the Arabic. I loved the beauty of the musicality, although you shouldn't say that in Islam because music is highly forbidden, or it is in some strains. I found the call to prayer, it just grabbed my heart when done musically and not somebody just yelling at the top of their lungs.
Yeah,
it'd be beautiful.
The
beautiful.
The Adhan, is it called the Adhan, the call to prayer? I mean, I've spent quite a bit of time in the Middle East because my brother lives there, and I've been to India a lot, where there are sizable Muslim communities, and I absolutely love hearing the Adhan at different times of the day.
Done properly. I mean, some people have no musicality. We've got to be honest. Doesn't matter what religion they're in, they just don't. But when you hear it done properly, it can be a beautiful, beautiful. Even still, it still touches me. Wherever there is pure spirituality, those things will touch me. Whether it is Christian monks singing plain song from the 7th century, whether it is the Maha Mantra being, I mean, one of my favorite things in Krishna consciousness is Nama Om Vishnu Pradaya Krishna Prustaya Bhutale. I absolutely love that floating transcendental quality of that whole piece, and I certainly won't ruin it by singing it any further. that thing. So I have a love for that, and I can still hear the Quran. I can still do that recitation in the same way as I did then, although I don't do it anymore. So I went. They said you need to go and perfect your Arabic more. So they sponsored me, and I went out initially for 6 weeks, but didn't come back for years. I literally didn't come back for years, and so I started at Morocco, went all across North Africa.
Wow.
I let a few countries I left out. So Algeria was not good at the time. Libya was not good at the time. So we scooted those over. And I just stayed in a set of addresses that were given to me, and different masjids, mosques for the English community, different masjids all around the place. And I'd help out, and I don't know, I'd wash the floors of the masjid and take classes and learn to, I cooked for people. Cooking has always been a huge part of my life in some way or another. So I learned to cook Middle Eastern food, and I went right across to Saudi Arabia and most of the Gulf countries, and I stopped at Iraq because at that time the first Gulf War was coming along, and I came back to England fairly qualified for an Englishman who was doing that, and ended up being a junior teacher in some of the mosques in South London, and that's what I did. up until I taught the children between 5 and 9, taught Arabic to the children, Quranic Arabic, and fiqh, which is Islamic jurisprudence, those kind of things.
That's so you've done a lot. Your life's been quite eventful. You know, you've traveled around North Africa, Middle East. You've learned Arabic. You're a fluent Arabic speaker.
I was. I would say I'm about 70% now. 70. I mean, if it's conversationally and you put a load of slang in it, then no. But like if you're talking high Arabic, if you're talking proper Saudi Arabic, then yes. I mean, I can still listen to on the television or read a newspaper. Just about. Yeah.
So let's go back to finding out more about your kind of relationship with the Hare Krishna movement.
Yeah.
What's happened over the last few years that has got you, you know, so you met a devotee in 1979 in London, 40 odd years later.
I reread the book.
That's a good answer. I like that.
It's a simple answer.
Yeah.
It's a simple answer, but it's a true one. I reread the book, but I'd already been questioning for long periods of time. Long periods of time. There were, and now I'll be serious for a minute, and I don't mean to be controversial in any way. If you have to kill someone to prove the point of your God, then you have lost your God in that instance that you conceived violence to another human being or to another creature, whatever it would be, if you're doing it in the name of your religion. When I see, and I'm not going to pick on Islam here because it's easy meat. It's an easy one to pick on because of what has happened since 2001, Osama bin Laden, etc., etc. I think you have to be very uncertain of your own beliefs and your own spirituality when you have to constantly defend it by violence. And I think that's as much in Protestant Christianity, when you look at, and Catholicism over the years, especially, most of the religions, and I've looked at religion in the expanse from one end to the other. And even in Hinduism and Buddhism, there's been violence, but generally that orchestrated violence that's at the core of the belief, the idea of jihad or crusade, either, was done thousands of years that way. So Hinduism is what, 5,000 years old at its oldest point. Buddhism coming a little bit further. Christianity, 2,000 years. But went through its teenage phase, what I call its teenage phase. It's throwing the toys out of the pram, it's strutting about, it's, you know, we've got the right way and anything else is wrong, and if you don't like us, we'll burn you. They did that in the you know, the sort of the Middle Ages. They've come along now and they've grown up. They're now in their if they were a human being, they're now in their 20s, late 20s, and they're become a little more woolly. And they become parents themselves, and they're a little bit more encompassing, and you know, come to the church and everything's a bit lovely and middle class and a bit lovely and whatever, and ever so wonderful. When they moved on, Islam started at, you know, in the 6th, 7th century, you know, that part. It's still, and I don't mean this in a nasty way, in some parts of it, not all, there are some wonderfully, profoundly spiritual people who have come out of Islam over the 1400-year period. I mean, some amazing thinkers that would have left the West back. Well, the West would have still been in its Middle Ages had it not been for the Islamic scholars that they plagiarized most of their knowledge from. But that idea of our bat is bigger than your bat, our book is more holy than your book, and our God is the right God, and your God is wrong, and your God being wrong, we will kill you for it. That idea offends my sense of what is spiritual and offends my idea that you have put your God in a box and you built a wall around him for your own. You're not serving God, you're serving your own ideas and misideas of what you think your God represents. That worries me. So when I see that the religions have gone along, Hinduism is very, and I use that term in a very loose sense because it's not one of my favorite terms, because as we all know, it's an umbrella term for a family of belief systems. But I'm going to use it for the wider general context. Hinduism is very old. It is now a very old man indeed. And I mean, it is, you know, if he was a human being, he's well into his hundreds now. He's seen all that. He's done all that 90 years that way or whatever. He's thrown his toys out the pram. He's done all those fighting between different tribes and sects and whatever. And now he doesn't have to do that because he's understood the essence of it is love. And that is the essence of all religions, is love. And that is the bit that I found missing in the Quran. So I'm going to be honest. That is the, and I'm setting myself up for a bit of criticism here, maybe. And some dangerous people if they don't like what I'm saying. But I don't see much love in the Quran. I see a lot of Rahman Rahim, benevolence and compassion. Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim, in the name of the beneficent, the most merciful. But I don't see that the major essence of the deen, the belief, is love. It might well be, but I think it's very camouflaged, and I think it's very far down. And when you have I know there's parts of every book that can be argued and taken apart and say out of context, and we all know that. And the Quran can be especially done so by people who don't understand the whole of it in context with one chapter to another, one surah to another, one ayah, one verse to another, etc. And the same is the same with the Bible. However, Jesus' central message was, when asked what was the most important, what is the commandment we must all obey above all others, and as we all know in Judaism there was an awful lot of commandments at the time, and he said love. Love. And so it has to be, love is the most. So when I came out of Islam and I read that book again and I saw that picture again with the essence of God in every living thing, then I thought, I can't. And then my wife and I would look at each other and thought, how can we eat meat? How can we do these things? How can we do? Because I cannot justify my existence, my paltry existence, is due to the violence that I am putting out, indirectly maybe, to a polystyrene piece of plastic, a wrapped piece of meat nicely cut, because we've mentally made that disjointment from what is the living animal. But when that light switch went on for me, I thought, I cannot hurt another thing. And I know people will say to me, well, ahimsa, which is my guiding thought in all of this. Ahimsa is, you're going to kill something somewhere just by moving around. We're killing microbes, but it's about intention. I can't help if I'm walking along and I accidentally kill something that's so microscopic I can't see it, because my intention is not to do so. But if I have the intention to kill something for me to eat, or I have the intention to kill somebody because they don't believe the same thing as I believe, then I've made a conscious choice. And if I've done that, then I have taken myself so far away from God, and I don't like the word God, but the essence of the divine, because through my actions, then I have to be understanding that. So I looked into let's go back to the origin of things. Root is very important for me. So I looked backwards. And I looked into that book, and I looked into service, seva, to serve, to submit. And that for me is the important thing. And love. Because if service is not with love, then what is it for? It's for your own gratification. And that's not me. Can't be for that. Otherwise I've lost again.
So how many years ago this time round, or how many years ago did you read this book?
What, for the second time?
Yeah, so you kind of came out of Islam 10, 15.
About 10 years. About 10 years, about a decade.
Years. Okay, about a decade.
Because I had a period of time where I just had that. It's almost like coming out of a messy divorce. You know, I came out of this in that spiritual rankle, because you're pulled by things that pulled you, but there's things that you cannot You know, if that man offends you, then take off his hand and chop him. You know, there are bits in the Quran. What about forgiveness? What about understanding why he stole the loaf of bread or what he did? There's reasons for everything, and to punish and to punish and to punish. In the end, you're punishing yourself.
Mm, mm.
So I couldn't live like that.
So tell us a bit more about your Krishna consciousness now. You and you can, I mean, I'm going to kind of prop you to say this because I think this is fascinating. You wear your Vaishnava attire to work.
Yep.
You work in the NHS.
Yes, Sikha, Tilak, everything.
Dhoti? Do you wear a dhoti to work?
No, I don't know. I don't wear a dhoti because I have to work in a health and safety environment and whatever. I'm going on wards. But I wear kurta, long kurta every day. Yeah, I love loose trousers and kurta.
And what do your work colleagues think about that?
It's just me. That's how they know me. That's all they know. And I've got on my desk is at work. I have I have Krishna, Radha Krishna at the top. I have Lord Chaitanya. I have Lord Jagannatha on my wall. There's a whole wall of
wow.
So that's a huge part of me.
And I guess you're kind of seen as an eccentric character by your work colleagues.
Yes and no. Until people, I find it is useful. This is useful. As Srila Prabhupada said, that it's like a policeman. If you want to find a policeman, you look for the person in the uniform. So for me, it not only keeps me in, and I use my tilak as an example of this. And I don't know if you can see it on my forehead.
I can see it, yeah.
Two lines. You've got the 2 lines. It keeps me in the parameters of those lines. I think, and I'm not, this is no judgment on anyone else. This is a thing that for me personally, I love authenticity, I love root, and I love essence of. And I think we are all in Maya, we are all tempted by things. We have the 4 regulative principles. So in my time, years ago, I would have loved the intoxicant side of it. Never been a drinker, but some of the things you smoked in Morocco, I've never been one for the illicit sex thing. I'm married to a woman who is the essence of my love. She's the light in my eyes and the beauty of my soul. And my greatest seva is to serve her out in the material world, outside of serving Krishna. Because if I can give to her, then that is where that is a service that I can't even put it into words. An articulate maiden is she takes the words from my mouth.
I can tell.
She's wonderful, and because of that, I'm not even open to the other temptations in that way. Gambling has never attracted me because I think it's a fool's errand. And I've been one of those people that if I give over a load of money, they give you a ticket back or something. And if you win, you give the ticket, you win loads of money. Me, if money was, if you're, how can I put this? If the stool was worth something, I would be born without the backside. I'm not the luckiest man when it comes to money. So I think I would buy the ticket and I just go and throw the ticket away. So I'm well aware that gambling is a fool's errand. So it's not, those things have never bothered me, but temptations in other things, so I don't know, maybe listening to music that might not be the most Krishna conscious or the most spiritual, those kind of things. I feel that it keeps me between the parallels of my tilak, keep me in the lines of how I should be. And it reminds me when I look in the mirror, you should be acting in a certain way. because not because it's conforming you, but because it's just an aid memoir, really, that you've got to be on top of your game all the time, because if you don't, then Maya will drag you into something, because it's so pervasive, and the Kali Yuga is so pervasive, and it's so easy just to get drawn out thread by thread. It's almost like the water washing away the sand, and we can get into non-practice through just the simplest. Oh, I'm a bit tired today. Oh, my bed is too comfortable. Whatever it might be, and this keeps me in those parameters and keeps me the thirst for it to get constant.
So you're wearing the Vaishnava attire. You follow the 4 regulative principles. You chant 16 rounds a day, minimum 16 rounds a day. So tell us a bit about maybe your involvement with different mats, or which mat you're involved with or haven't been involved with. What's your kind of relationship with the Hare Krishna kind of mat communities?
Okay, so I went. So it's going to be the largest, and almost can be boastful at times, so that it's not only the largest, but it's the best. Has always been a little bit of a thing for me, because it comes back to that thing: my bat's bigger than your bat, and just because you have the largest does not mean it's the best. And most women will attest to that. In many different things in life, I'm sure. The biggest car doesn't mean you have the best car, whatever. So there are benefits, obviously, with ISKCON being a large mat. Of course there is, and I use all of the materials that ISKCON has put. Like my Srimad Bhagavatam, the complete, is an ISKCON one, and so is my Chaitanya
Charitamrita.
Yeah,
don't worry. I mean,
all of those are all my publications are ISKCON publications generally, but I also have a lot of Sri Swaminarayan publications, because I have friends within that too, and although they are not Vaishnava as such, they have I have looked at them, although I don't sit in their mat at all, because there is a vast difference, and I would class myself as if you ask me what I am, apart from saying I'm a human being that is struggling every day like everyone else, if you're asking me where I sit within Gaudiya Vaishnavism. Where I sit within there, I'll sit anywhere that anybody puts up a seat and says sit down, because that to me is inclusivity. And so I will sit with ISKCON, but I will also sit with the smaller mats around as well. And I was in contact with, I can't remember the name offhand, and you've caught me at one of those moments where
don't worry. It's also quite late at night as well. Yeah.
Well, that thing where we saw ISKCON actually met with them. It's on your
the Sri Chaitanya Sarasat mat.
Thank you very much. I love the way it just rolls off your tongue. Yes, so I'm interested in them as well. So because it's nice to see other perspectives of the same thing. Because
I have to be. This is just a personal view. Is that it's actually very difficult to find the differences sometimes. The differences are very kind of very thin. There are some slightly bigger differences, 1 or 2 theological differences, but on the surface, it's very similar. Very similar.
And I gather that would be the same. But I sometimes feel that some of the smaller mats, or people I've met from there, are a little less judgmental, maybe, of ISKCON than ISKCON sometimes is of them. That's just an observance. Whether or not that's true in a greater sense, or that's just in the individual sense, has yet to be proven to me.
There's probably a number of people that would agree with that, and some that would disagree.
If you're going to ask me where I stand, my fundamentals are the love of the Lord Sri Krishna, the love of Lord Chaitanya. I have a particular devotion to Lord Jagannatha, but Lord Chaitanya especially. So for those reasons, that drawing That thing is beyond words. Actually, I can't give you a reason why that and not something else. I don't know. I think it's the logic of it through Srila Prabhupada's teaching. I think he was probably one of the, if not the greatest Vaishnava teacher of the last 80 years. Solely because he came to England and translated what he translated in the way he translated it. His command of language was amazing, and in that respect, he won my heart that way.
That's very nice. That's very nice to hear. Because Srila Prabhupada's mission from the 60s onwards was to spread Krishna consciousness with Western people. And it's a very basic thing that we need to be reminded of. And I'm feeling very much like I should be politically correct today. Sometimes I say things that are inappropriate, but I'm being quite politically correct today. Srila Prabhupada's mission was to reach out to Western people. It wasn't necessarily just to appease the Indian diaspora, which is largely what it does now in the West. Bit of controversial statement, but it's a view that a lot of people are coming around towards. And if you look at ISKCON now, what will ISKCON look like in 25 years' time? Quite different from the way it looks now, actually, in terms of the race of people involved with the organization, the background of people.
Are you saying that you think a lot of the Western people would have dropped away?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
I totally agree with you. And I think it will be picked up by the Indian diaspora over here now, and they will run it. And
yeah, I mean, if you look at
such a bad thing, I'm not so sure.
I mean, if you look at the community of Gaudiya Vaishnavism in the UK, it's around 0.002% of the population are practitioners of Krishna consciousness. So that's a lovely little number, but it's not, in my opinion, nothing to really celebrate about in terms of making. I'm a bit of a missionary, you see. It's kind of part of my background in evangelical Christianity, which I've turned my back on. Some of the stuff I've taken from it is this zealous approach to we've got to get out there and spread Krishna consciousness. And I'm not proud at 0.002% of the population being practitioners.
No.
I would
and
like
that
a
is
bit
another
more.
reason that I look as I do, because wherever I go, I'm an advert.
Yeah.
So when people say to me, "What is this mark on your head at work?" They don't now because they know me well, and I've been there for 7 years. But and I have a fairly standing job within the hospital, so they know. But when sometimes you have contractors turn up and they say, "Oh, we've got to see the health and safety manager. Can you tell me where it is?" And that's me. And they're like, "Is he having a laugh?" So it's fine because they understand. They get it very quickly that this is not a game, and it's very much a serious undertaking.
And I think I'm just thinking about it in context. You're not in London, you're not in Birmingham, you're not in Manchester. You're on the Isle of Wight, which I think the Isle of Wight is predominantly quite a conservative white middle class island. It's
old. Don't forget
old. Its political representation is quite
it's
right,
a homogenous
right of centre.
Yes, it's a homogenous. What can I say? It's full of Daily Mail readers of a certain age who have come here to die.
I mean, I'm from Bath.
Love Bath.
Yeah, I mean, I'm from Bath, which is very, very similar to that. Okay. I'm just conscious we've been chatting for almost an hour now. It's been great to chat with you. Oh, my Facebook's. I've got so many messages. It's kind of. I need to turn my phone off, really. It's been great to chat with you, absolutely, and to kind of find out more about your journey, your background, your experiences, and I'm hoping for a visit to the Isle of Wight at some point this year. It's been about 6 years since I've been to the Isle of Wight, and I'm looking forward to visiting again, and hopefully we can maybe organize some kind of kirtan event or kirtan festival.
Absolutely. Just before we go, I mean, this is a serious undertaking for me as well, and I have that same missionary zeal that you have in that way of, in Islam, it's called dawah, to propagate.
Yeah.
And Islam, like evangelical Christianity, is quite successful in doing that. And I think that is something that we lack in that sort of it's easy to stay in the temple and do what we do and hope we don't lose members and whatever. But what about what Srila Prabhupada did, is get new people, new blood. I also have that thing that being 56 years old, I am running out of time. I don't know. I know where the past has gone, and I wish I'd done this so many years ago. And my sort of final comments here are, there is a regret there, although I don't live in that regret because, everything has brought me to the place I am today. However, I would have loved to have been this sure of my spiritual journey 30 years ago. I also realize that the time is running out. So this is, for me, I've come home. And this is the importance of what I'm doing now and why I have a Vaishnava appearance and why I make sure that that is understood by people, is because I'm running out of time. I cannot guarantee tomorrow because it might not be. So I try to make every day that thing.
Yeah, I find you quite inspiring, actually. I mean, certainly since we've been in touch with each other for about 2 years. Yeah, and I love the fact, even though I don't wear my devotional Vaishnava attire outside, I love the fact that you wear it to work. You're a great kind of example of a devotee. So Prabhuji, it's been great to have you as guest number 30 on the Hare Krishnas in Britain podcast. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Haribo, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
And thank you to all of you for tuning in this week to episode number 30 of the Hare Krishnas in Britain podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube, please do put a positive comment. Please do like it. Please do share it with your friends and family. And if you're watching this on Facebook, do the same. You can like it. You can love it. You can care for it. Hopefully you won't be angry about it. And you can put a positive comment and share it with your friends and family. Thank you to everyone for tuning in over the last 30 episodes. And here's to the next 30 episodes. Thank you and Hare Krishna.